Dr. Rogers ran those off for everyone at Christmas. And maybe 4 people were not here, and she asked me if I would give it, And of course, it's been riding around in my car since Christmas. And my husband took my car today to have it detailed, so. So if any of you did not, and there's a lot of interesting things in there, so very good to have. And one other thing I wanted to say is, in the past, like the people that have a 3.0 GPA, we had the time to go and, and above, to look at, your address, phone number, although some of you don't have a phone number listed on there. Y'all must be, agents for the FBI or CIA sitting here, we don't know it. But, so your phone number wasn't listed down there, but also there are some of those forms that ask for your community activities and, that's why it's sad, but in an age where we like to be doing it secretively because it's a surprise for you. But again, I always remember, there was a time when we had 102 students here, and at Penning, we would give, academic excellence award to the person with the highest GPA and academic achievement. And one student missed out because of our error. That's why I asked you to send me your name. And that deadline is about to end because I have to have those forms in before the 28th. And also, a lot of, I'm crying in my beer now, I just don't have beer. We have to do this long, drawn-out, 2-week process of learning Quality Matters online. And it is mandatory for us. It's not for y'all, anything that y'all have to do. But it is huge of what we have to do. So for the next 2 weeks, but that happens everywhere. You gotta do stuff and you just gotta do it and get it done. So anyway, so please, I have to have your name. If you think you have a 3.0, and I'll be sending you those forms to fill out and to send back to me. If I do not get those forms back, I cannot send them in. Okay?
Send them back via email?
Yes, send it back via email to me. To my agrade@gadsdenstate.edu. Okay? Please do that. If you can by tomorrow, I will be out of pocket this weekend, and what is this thing? The 28th is Monday, isn't it? I mean, at the latest, but if I don't get it by early Monday morning, because there's some things what my schedule's going to be. Okay, Tristan?
Here.
Mallory?
Here.
Christina?
Here.
Tiffany?
Here.
Roberta?
Here.
Robbie? Julia?
Here.
Cheyenne?
Here.
Erica? Caitlin?
Here.
Casey?
Here.
Alyssa?
Here.
Brian, he's sick. Said that this is the first time he's ever missed a college class. Ryan Gaskins.
Here.
Or is that Ryan?
It's Ryan.
I just wanted to show your name again. Brandon.
Here.
Joshua.
Here.
This is the best ever.
Angel. Tanya.
Here.
Spencer.
Here.
Cameron. Avery.
Here.
Alan. Alan, yeah. Brittany.
Here.
Delina. Delina must be sick. Amanda.
Here.
Jessica.
Here.
Amber.
Here.
Jose.
Here.
Michaela.
Here.
Autumn.
Here.
Misty.
Here.
Wow. Kirsten.
Here.
Scotty.
Here.
Here. Go sing in the acapella. You could go sing for Humphrey. Chandler. Chandler, no? Brianna.
Here.
Dorcas. Tessa.
Here.
Morgan. Morgan Wood?
Six.
I don't know.
Six, yeah.
Are you having a hard time getting to the Unit 2 stuff? Like the PowerPoints? Do you see the link to the Unit 2 PowerPoints?
Do I see them?
Okay, I just wanted to go over management skills and functions, to reiterate, management. We've already talked about the difference between manager and leaders, but hopefully we have a manager that is a leader And the thing that sets leaders apart is that they inspire and influence people, to work towards a common goal. And if you think about it, a manager, if they do not have that leadership ability, they're not gonna do well. But depending on what's going on in nursing at the time, if there's a nursing saturation, they'll get by with a job for a pretty good while. I have been through 3 nursing saturations. One, when I was an LPN, and they were going to, cut the LPN days back to 9 days of pay period, so, they could save money on that. And the reason 9 days, you were still considered a full-time employee at 9 days, but you just didn't get that 10th day of pay. So they cut you 8 hours. And then another thing, and you still had your benefits, but still you were gonna be cut 8 hours of pay. So someone, and usually I'm in the thick of things, but I wasn't a member of this. I guess it's because I was too green. They probably didn't trust me because I was only like, just turned 19. And, if they knew my, habits, that all they have to do is give me a couple of drinks and I'll tell you anything you want to know. Of course, back when I was 19, I didn't do much of that. But anyway, so someone, by our time clocks, and yes, we had time clocks, someone put these flyers out, secret meetings of the LPNs, you know where and you know what time. And that was, pretty effective in that they thought there was going to be talk of a union. And so, collective bargaining, another word for it. So, they didn't reduce us to the 9 days, but they wanted to know who was behind handing out those flyers, because they would have been punished, but they never found that out. Another saturation in the 90s, there was a saturation of nurses, and what they were doing is they were hiring, this is the early 90s, they would hire 2 RNs for 1 part-time position. So therefore, they saved money in that they didn't have to pay full-time benefits. And then in 2008, when the housing market crashed, nurses were staying in, practicing longer. Some nurses were coming back to work because their spouses had lost their jobs, or just the money factor. Of course, that saturation wasn't as bad, but I did have students at the time. We had no one to come and feed you guys like they are now, because they didn't need to hire, that bad, at all. They had nurses, which reminds me, y'all know hospice is coming to feed you today. But anyway, but I had students who had, they graduated and they thought, well, it's time for me to go out and find a job. Well, some of them had difficulty doing that. They couldn't just go anywhere they wanted. So there will be another saturation, probably won't be in my lifetime, but, because I just don't know how long it's gonna take for them to, for COVID to run its course. And, managers are set apart definitely because they've got to take care of the staffing, the unit, a lot of paperwork. I am not a paperwork person.
Dr. Green, you're gonna report.
I thought it was recorded. Yeah. Oh, you mean bring the screen down? Gotta deal with it. again, coordinating resources, staffing, responsible for staffing. And there was also, I don't know if they still do this, but as far as staffing, they used to in my day, and I know I keep saying that, no one, but, they would come around with this, Scantron for you to fill out the acuity level of the patient. And so they would staff by the acuity level of the patient. But I just don't know how they do that now, because most of them are high acuity, but I suppose someone who has a feeding tube, maybe a BiPAP would be of higher acuity. Maybe someone that's receiving multiple units of blood, might be of higher acuity, but I still don't know if the staffing mix changes very much. I didn't see it much in my day, even though you filled out that little schedule. But anyway, that's another thing, the manager does. And I was at one time going to have a manager come and speak to you guys so that you could get the full impact of what they really do have to do. Because again, I don't want you to think they're just sitting in their office, twiddling their thumbs, painting their nails, and we're out here struggling, because that is not the situation. A manager that did that would go down pretty quickly, because they do have to be responsible for why they have a quick changeover of nurses, and also patient complaints. They've got to answer for that also. So they can't just, so the women would be in there polishing their nails. I guess the guys would be in there looking at football, TV, I don't know. Could be into sports or maybe video gaming, I don't know. So, it's very difficult to understand staffing as well when you've only worked in this area, because I understand, even at UAB, that's been 20 years ago that I was there, but I understand in larger metropolitan areas like Atlanta, the staffing is more diverse. Hopefully it's more diverse and that there's more minorities in nursing, and I have heard that. And then, I always say she when I'm talking about a nurse, and that's because in my day, if you had one male nurse on a unit, that was something. But, so maybe in the larger cities, males do take on more of a manager role than you see here in the rural areas. I talked about the type of power, legitimate power that is given to you with the position that you have, whether it's charge nurse, nurse manager, supervisor, and then chief nursing officer. So that would be legitimate power. And then I talked about coercive power, where, I will, if you don't do this, then it's a threat. And then there's reward, where if you will do this for me, like maybe work extra. Of course, now they're doing it with incentive money. No one, probably Jesus, could get you work extra during COVID without that huge incentive. Huge. I'm just shocked at the incentive, the money. So I guess that's considered the reward. Reverent power, if you have somebody that is a role model, and to me, that's probably the best power, that someone thinks enough of you, that you are, or you think enough of someone that you want to be like them and you role model it yourself, and I have had that before. When I first started in the intensive care unit, I had a role model, and she was my role model until one day, she had a patient that I had had before, so for 5 or 6 years, she had been my role model. I thought she was just perfect. And she was taking care of a patient who had been playing cards, and he was military. Not that matter, but you know, he was buff. But anyway, someone shot him like 3 times with a .22. Didn't kill him, but it messed him up pretty bad. So he was a young guy, he was very anxious, he was in a lot of pain, and you were always in his room, you know. And they didn't have the automatic beds then. They did, but they didn't even have them in the ICU because they didn't want the patients to lower their head of their bed or move themselves around. So you had this old crank bed that you had to, some of the nursing homes may still have them. And so he wanted the bed, you know, he just couldn't get comfortable. And he was always wanting, you know, demanding, but again, all of my patients were VIP patients, so I took care of him, but he like to drive me crazy. So the next day I said, you know, I just can't take him again. It's just, I just, please. So my role model took him, and of course he was on the ventilator, but he could communicate with you. But he slept all day with my role model. I thought, wow, she really is great. Until she confessed to me that she went and got some curare, Pagulon, which is a paralytic.
Oh, God.
He got it. That's how she was keeping it right. So pretty much he was laying there with all those same thoughts he had the day before. Because when you give a paralytic, you're paralyzing every muscle in their body, even their respiratory muscles. But he was on the ventilator. But she was giving him that paralytic, and she thought that was okay. Now, maybe if she was giving him that paralytic and some propofol, which that still was not ordered for him, and we didn't even have propofol back then, but she was giving him paralytic, so he was laying there paralyzed with his mind still fully alert. She was no longer my role model, and to this day, when I look at her, I think about that, what she did to that patient. Of course, I could have reported her. But you know what? She was so well liked on that unit. Guess who would have been the person who had gone down for it? Me. So. And recently my BFF, who I worked with back then also, she kept talking about Brenda, what a great nurse she was. Remember Brenda? And I said, I'm going to tell you something. And I'll tell you why. No, she's not. And I lost respect for her, and I told her, and she said, really, she did that? I said, oh, yes, she did. Now, since then, I have still heard of nurses, if their patient is on the ventilator and maybe they have, I don't know for what reason, or I don't know, but I heard that this one nurse would go into another patient's room that had a fentanyl drip or a propofol drip, and they would just pull a syringe of it out of that patient's medication and then go give it to the patient they wanted to sedate. Conflict, I talked about intrapersonal conflict, interpersonal conflict, and I do want to say I felt bad when, you know, I talked about the instructor that came in that had a bad attitude and everything. I saw her coming the other day, and she was better, and she was nicer, and I thought, kind of feel bad. I don't know, you know, maybe she was better with the students, but anyway, I felt bad about that. And we know intrapersonal conflict is within us. It's like my intrapersonal conflict right now is whether I should retire or not. And I've been going with having this interpersonal conflict for a long time, and the only thing that has kept me at this school I was off during the summer, and Dr. Rogers is off during the summer, and I was already thinking I wasn't coming back. And so I took my degrees off the wall and put them in a box, and Dr. Rogers just couldn't stand that. She just couldn't stand that at all. And she said, I just want you to know that when I have a bad day, I just think, when you're here, at least one student loves you. And I thought, you know what? She's right. So I didn't put them back. Well, yes, I did. I put them back up on the wall because of what she said. And then interpersonal conflict between individuals. When there is a conflict, you've got to make sure, even if you're the person that's reporting the conflict, but if you're the nurse manager, you've got to know, the first thing is you've got to identify the problem. If you never identify the problem, you cannot address that conflict and successfully resolve that conflict if you do not identify the problem. It's just like, can you help your patient if you do not assess them first? Because you can't identify the problem if you don't assess them first. And then there are organizational problems that come about because of individuals and new policies and procedure changes. It's like, right now we all have this organizational conflict with this huge task of this thing that everyone has to do, and I'm not gonna say the name of that thing. And it's gotta be done within 2 weeks as instructors that we have to do. And if you do not do it within the 2 weeks, you gotta do it again, you gotta pay $221 to do it. But you know what? If they do not, there are people that will not do. And you're gonna come to know this, you may already. But when you go to work, there's certain things that you guys will have to do as far as, these policy updates and the training for the corporation on diversity and HIPAA, and you've got all this training that comes up, and then it becomes a backlog, and then all of a sudden, you give this paper. You either do this training, get it caught up, or, I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't know to fire you right now, but. So resolving conflict,